Good evening, everyone. I hope you all had a good week. And tonight is Sunday. Sunday night. What an awesome night. Hello, Valerie. How are you? Just gonna put a little more light on this subject for you guys. There we go. We're gonna start tonight with a prayer. He gives grace to the humble. He gives grace to the humble. Proverbs 3:34. He gives grace to the humble. That is so true. So true. We always want to make sure we stay humble. Hello, Tammy. How are you? Good evening. Welcome in, everyone. Let me get comfortable, and we are going to get started on our Dear Santa letters. Chapter 3. Reaching inside the small shoebox, Lindy withdrew the next letter. Unfolding it, she spread the paper out on the table and read aloud. Dear Santa, thank you for my daddy, Mommy, has a baby in her tummy, and I would like a baby sister and rollerblades, Lindy. I got my rollerblades, but I didn't get my sister. Instead, we got Chad. I don't think you were disappointed, though, her mother reminded her. No, the way I figured it, Santa knew what he was doing when he sent Chad. I remember Dad talking to me at the hospital and went to see him. I had to stand on my tippy toes to look into the nursery. The instant I set eyes on him, I knew in my heart of hearts that deep down I really wanted a little brother. Santa had come through after all. From the time her parents brought Chad home from the hospital, Lindy had doted on him. She couldn't bear to hear him cry and did whatever she could to entertain him, although there was a 6-year difference in their ages. Lindy and Chad had developed a special bond that continued to this day. I don't know that I can wait until Thursday to see him, Lindy said. Her brother and his small family came regularly for dinner Thursday night, which was her brother's day off from the warehouse. Ashley is only working part-time, so I'm sure if you give her a call, you'll be able to connect. Will do. Lindy couldn't wait to see her brother and Ashley, although her nephew Peter was the real draw. That kid had her heart from the first moment she had held him in her arms. He'd gazed up at her, and their eyes had linked. From then on, Lindy was a lost cause. Chad and Ashley had married young. Chad told Lindy he knew right away that Ashley would one day be his wife. Even as a teenager, Ashley said she felt the same about Chad. Without question, he was the one for her. If Lindy didn't love them so much, she could almost be jealous. Intrigued now, she reached into the box for the next letter. opening it and setting it down on the table beside the other two. Her printing had gotten much better, she noticed. I wrote this when I was 7, she said, reading it aloud. Dear Santa, I'm glad I got a brother instead of a sister. Chad is cute when he isn't crying. I like my rollerblades too. I go out every day when it doesn't rain. I want a magic marker pen set and a fashion Barbie this year. Oh, and you should give Billy Kincaid. He's mean. He pulls my hair at school and chases me at recess. Lindy. Lindy looked up at her mother when she finished reading the letter. As I recall, I got my wish that year. Yes, you did, her mother said, and you colored until your fingers were every shade of the rainbow. What I remember is Chad grabbing my masterpiece and shoving it into his mouth before anyone could stop him. Memories rolled past her like scenes in a silent movie. She vividly remembered Billy Kincaid and how much she disliked him. He had been a year or two ahead of her in school. Not a day passed when he didn't find some way to torment her. Once he even stole her homework. At recess, he made a point of chasing her. To her, he was the meanest boy in school. Lindy didn't remember writing Santa about him. At the mention of his name, thoughts of Billy Kincaid, were fresh in her mind. Whatever happened to Billy, her mother asked. Lindy didn't have a clue. I don't remember him beyond 2nd grade. He must have transferred to another school. As far as she was concerned, good riddance. She hadn't thought about him since grade school. I remember you complained about him, her mother recalled. I ended up going to the school principal to find out what the deal was. You did? Maybe that was the reason Billy had transferred schools. Not that she cared. Lindy was simply happy to have him out of her life. Dad came up with me and spoke to Billy's privately. Afterward, your father said he felt the reason Billy paid you all that attention was because he had a crush on you. If that's true, then he had a curious way of showing it. Boys are difficult to understand. It was likely something happening in his home life. Maybe he was attracted to you and didn't know how to show it. Save me from boys who have a crush on me then, Lindy said, thinking of Brian. Nothing had changed through the years, as far as she could tell. One last letter remained. Lindy was 8 at the time. Dear Santa, my friend Peggy has a bicycle with tassels and a basket with a flower on the front. Can you bring me one just like hers? Thank you, Lindy. Her handwriting had greatly improved by then, she noticed, and a smile was hard to hold back as she set aside the letter. What's so funny? Her mother asked. By 8, I knew Santa was all fun. I wrote that letter so you and Dad knew I really wanted for Christmas. And you got your wish, didn't you? I did. I loved that bike. Peggy and I rode all over the neighborhood on our twin bikes. Her mother focused her attention on Lindy. Have you noticed a pattern here? She asked, glancing down at the letters. Lindy's eyes followed her mother's. Well, other than Santa answering my Christmas wishes, not really. She certainly didn't see anything of significance. Well, interesting and fun to review. There was nothing more than childish letters. Look again, her mother advised. Lindy glanced down at the 4 letters in front of her. What am I supposed to be looking for? She asked. You don't see it, do you? Obviously, she didn't. When I read your letters, her mother continued, I noticed nearly everything you asked Santa to bring you, he did. Not always in the way you wanted, but in a way that was better. You guys are chit-chatty tonight. That's good. True enough. Looking at her own scribbles, Lindy frowned. Mom, come on. You and Dad got me all the gifts I wanted. To be fair, yes. But remember, you wanted a dad. And Santa sent Phil to the front door on Christmas Day. True enough. She couldn't deny it. She had gotten the daddy she had asked for, along with a brother. And Billy Kincaid had disappeared after she told Santa he deserved coal for Christmas. Plus, she got her own bicycle, the one with pink tassels on the handlebars. She had ridden it into the ground. Well, she might have not gotten the sister she requested. She willingly forgave Santa. What she did get was a friend of her own age in Peggy. You know what I think, her mother said. My guess is that you're going to tell me. I think you need to write Santa another letter. What? Come on, Mom. Don't you think I'm a bit old to believe in Santa Claus? Her mother shook her head. The word you need seriously to consider is believe. Her words gave Lindy pause. She had been in an emotional rut for so long. It was hard to look at the positive in any situation. Reading those old letters had been fun, and they excuse me, take a drink here. Her words gave Lindy pause. She had been in an emotional rut for so long. It was hard to look at the positive in any situation. Reading those old letters had been fun, and they reminded her that at one time she believed with all her heart. She looked forward to each Christmas with happy anticipation, knowing her wishes would be granted. After hearing everything that's been going on in your life with Brian and Celeste, plus Media Blast, writing Santa might not be such a bad idea. Maybe a letter to him and knowing what you would like the most for Christmas is exactly what you need to do. And write it with the same trust you had as a child. It sounded silly for someone her age to be writing Santa. Lindy, her mother prompted. I'll think on it, she said, not wanting to dampen her mother's enthusiasm, and at the same time finding the suggestion completely ridiculous. She struggled to believe in the magic of Christmas. If anyone learned she had followed through work with such an outrageous idea, she would be embarrassed. Later that same afternoon, Lindy helped her mother prepare dinner. Peeling potatoes, she found herself mulling over the silly Santa letters she had penned as a kid. Her mother was right about one thing. She needed to believe that everything happened for a reason. She was glad Brian had shown his true colors before their relationship went any further. Although difficult, Celeste should have been honest with her. It would have hurt less, but not nearly as much as discovering their betrayal the way she did. In retrospect, Lindy had to wonder how long they had hid their affair. Weeks, surely. Weeks before her move. Lindy noticed changes in Brian before Celeste. He didn't call as often, and when they did get together, he seemed distracted. She attributed his lack of attentive to any number of factors. To be fair to herself, with her work struggles, her mind had been preoccupied. In contrast, Celeste was her normal, cheery self. She hadn't given anything away. It stunned Lindy how naive she had been and how trusting. When confronted, Celeste had nothing to say, and Lindy didn't seem to either. After those first awkward minutes, Celeste blurted out that she was sorry. Lindy didn't stick around to hear anything more. She had left, and they hadn't spoken since. And that had been months ago. Losing her best friend had been a major blow. They had been as close as sisters. Lindy thought best friends. They had done everything together for so long that losing Celeste was like missing her right arm. But friends, true friends, didn't betray each other. If Lindy were to write Santa, which is she had no intention of doing, she'd ask for a new best friend. She'd also ask him to send her a new love interest, one with character and substance, a man with integrity. She wasn't so much interested in tall, dark, and handsome. Brian had been all three. Looks didn't matter as much as what was going on the inside of his heart. A man with heart. In thinking about it, she wasn't sure Santa or anyone else would be able to grant Lindy her wish. And that takes us to chapter 4. The doorbell off the garage opened. "Is my girl home?" Lindy's father asked. He paused long enough to kiss Ellen and hug Lindy. "Missed you," he said, his eyes full of love. "You're home early," Ellen said, as she continued to build the dinner salad, adding a sliced pear and chopped walnuts. Lindy knew, as supervisor of the local UPS center, her father didn't often return home until 6 or 7, especially this time of year. "I left early. I didn't want to miss out on any time with my baby girl." "Dad, I'm hardly a baby." "You'll always be my sweet pea," he commented. Yep, this was home, and the love that surrounded her eased her ache in Lindy's heart. Opening the cookie jar, her dad reached for a thumbprint and headed to the countertop to sort the mail. After he went through everything, he looked at Ellen. "Did you show Lindy the Santa letters?" "I did." "What do you think, sweet pea?" She shrugged. It was going over them with Mom, and to think she saved them all these years. "Astonishing, really," Lindy said. Lindy spent the evening with her parents, catching up on everything she had missed since her last visit. Her parents headed to bed at 10, and after calling her brother and planning to connect, Lindy went to her own room. Bo leaped into her mattress and cuddled up on the front of her bed. She intended to read as she did most nights. Sitting up in bed, her blankets gathered around her with a book in her hands, was how she normally ended her days. Instead of being drawn into the story, her thoughts drifted over the unexpected events. Most likely, this wasn't going to be able to concentrate. Turning out the light, she tossed and turned for the next hour. Then, giving up, she turned the nightstand lamp on and sat up. Knowing it was useless, she got out of bed, rummaging through her desk drawer until she found a tablet and a pen. She looked down at the blank page and wrote, "Dear Santa, it's Lindy. I hope you haven't forgotten me after all these years. Checking in to let you know this hasn't been the best year of my life. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask for world peace. My request should be right up your alley, if a bit out of the ordinary. Could you kindly introduce me to a man like the one you brought my mother all those years ago? A man who has value and values family and commitment. One who is trustworthy and honorable, hardworking, caring, and fun. It would help if he was fond of children too. I know he's out there somewhere, and frankly, I don't want to wait until I get to heaven to meet him. I could do with another good friend, one I can pal around with and share secrets, one with a sense of humor and adventure. Just wondering if you could clone Peggy. I'm grateful to work with Media Blast, and it would be able to use the talent God gave me. If I were to have my latest proposal accepted, I know it would greatly advance my career. I'll leave it to you to get working on the list, and thank you in advance. You've never disappointed me in the past." With her letter written, Lindy felt ready to sleep. A smile came over her as she rested her head against her pillow. Who would have thought she would have think to write Santa beyond the age of 8? Life is full of wonders. "Did you sleep well?" her mother asked as Lindy stumbled out of her bedroom at 7:30 the following morning. "I did." Truly, she was amazed at how well she had slept. Once she had written Santa, she experienced a fitful night of peace. It was probably the silliest thing she had done in ages, but she couldn't discount the contentment that came over her after she penned the letter. "I've got my book club meeting this afternoon," her mother said, sounding almost apologetic. Barely listening, Lindy brewed herself a cup of coffee, opening the refrigerator to add creamer. "It's our Christmas party," her mother continued. "Would you like to join me?" Leaning her backside against the kitchen counter, Lindy blew into the hot coffee and shook her head. "Thanks, Mom, but if you don't mind, I thought I'd run a couple of errands this morning, and then I'm meeting Chad for lunch on his break." "Of course, I didn't want you to feel like I was ignoring you." "Don't be silly. Go have fun. I'm capable of entertaining myself for a few hours." Lindy was touched by her mother's thoughtfulness, although it didn't surprise her. After a lazy morning, Lindy met up with her brother at the Wachinachi warehouse. Chad had gotten his degree from Central Washington University in supply chain management. He had always had great skills and enjoyed his job. They headed over to the local diner and talked non-stop for nearly 45 minutes. Chad filled her in on his and Ashley's plans for the holidays, and Lindy was pleased to know she would have plenty of time to spend with them and Peter. Knowing she had needed to update on her own life, she gave him a brief rundown on what had been going on with her. When he heard about Brian and Celeste, she watched as the anger tightened in his face. "I hate that you had to go through that, sis," Chad said, his dark eyes full of sympathy. "It's over. I've moved on." "Good. Glad to hear it." They hugged outside of the diner, and as she walked toward where she parked her car, she realized it hadn't been an exaggeration. She felt free of the disappointment and hurt she carried on her shoulders for the last 6 months. Her next stop was at the local dry cleaners. She had a few items she wanted pressed and hadn't had the time to get it done for herself. When she finished, she noticed a Starbucks had opened on the tail end of the strip. A peppermint latte sounded good, and she headed in that direction. After ordering a salad for lunch, she was in the mood for something sweet and hot. As she stood in line, Lindy noticed a tall, slim, fashionably dressed black woman in front of her. The woman turned to ask her friend something, and Lindy thought she looked vaguely familiar. By the time Lindy placed her order, she was afraid she was staring at the woman, debating if she should introduce herself. No, that was silly. It couldn't possibly be who she thought it was. The only black person she knew from Wachinachi had been her childhood friend Peggy. After collecting her drink, Lindy headed for the door, not wanting to look foolish. "Lindy, is that you?" The question came at her from the table close to the exit. Peggy, it couldn't be. Peggy Scranton? Lindy Carmichael. Lindy started to laugh. Really? What were the chances? Peggy, oh my goodness, how long has it been? Peggy smiled and gestured for Lindy to join her and her friend. Since right before middle school, Peggy had been the one of Lindy's closest friends from 2nd grade on. The trouble they had gotten into was epic. The summer between grade school and middle school, Peggy's family had moved into a new development on the other side of town. Peggy had enrolled in a different school. For the first few months, they were able to keep in contact and maintain their friendship. As time went on, they grew apart. Over the years, Lindy had wondered what had ever happened to her grade school friend. "This is Jane," Peggy said, introducing her friend, a blonde, blue-eyed woman who looked to be about their age. "Hi, I'm Lindy. Lindy and I were the best of friends eons ago," Peggy explained. The two started to exchange stories from their youth, entertaining Jane, who had a bright, easy laugh. "Remember the time we decided to form our own band?" Peggy asked. "We were doomed to failure, since neither of us could play a musical instrument or sing, nor did we let that stop us." "Hey, I can sing," Lindy insisted, although rarely on key. Peggy smiled. "Since we clearly weren't going to make it as rock stars, we launched a neighborhood newspaper. A gossip tabloid is more like it, Lindy clarified. We certainly didn't lack for originality. Remember that 4th of July we decided to put on our own parade, Peggy asked. Indeed I do. That idea had been one of their few successes. Peggy's two older siblings had come along, and then Chad and his friends had joined the line. And with their bicycles, Peggy carried the American flag, waving it from side to side as Lindy beat a tiny drum. Soon, several other neighborhood kids raced to become part of the fun. They didn't have much of an audience, but none of that mattered. Lindy used a flat iron and started my hair on fire. Lindy nearly snorted in her latte, laughing. She felt dreadfully awkward, and thinking it would help, she chopped off nearly all of Peggy's hair. Then she had Peggy cut her hair so they would look alike. Even at an early age, she knew she would never make it through beauty school. After wiping the tears from her eyes, she asked, "You're living here in Wachenachy?" Peggy is the editor and journalist of the local magazine, Wachenachy Alive, Jane answered. She does an excellent job, too. Oh my goodness, and to think you started your literary career with me as your assistant editor, Lindy joked. Jane makes me sound like I'm writing for the New York Times. It's a local publication with a small but dedicated staff. What about you? Peggy asked. Don't tell me you're here in Wachenachy and it's taken us this long to reconnect. Lindy shook her head. Seattle. I'm just home for Christmas. How long will you be in town? Nearly 2 weeks unless I hear back on a proposal, I submitted. That's unlikely though. 2 weeks, perfect. Just think of the ruckus we can raise in that amount of time. You should join us tonight, Jane said, looking to Peggy, who eagerly nodded in agreement. What's tonight? Girls' night out, Jane said. We're heading for drinks at the wine press. It's that new place in town. Lindy couldn't remember hearing anything about a new restaurant while she was home last summer. It's been around for a couple of months now. It's the in place to go have fun. And the wine choices are excellent, Jane added. The owner features Washington State wines. It's surprising how many good wines come from our very own state. General knowledge told her Washington was the largest wine-producing state outside of California. She wasn't surprised to learn that the wine press chose to highlight state wineries. It was smart to support the local economy. Do you have any other plans? Jane asked, and seemed genuine in her wanting Lindy to join them. Nothing important. I'd love to meet your friends. You'll meet Chloe, Peggy told her. She's a supervisor for Costco. They stayed and talked for another hour before agreeing to meet up later for drinks and appetizers. While they were together, Peggy called and made reservations at the wine press at 6 o'clock. Her mother was back by this time, and Lindy returned from her errands. She must have been smiling when she walked in the door because her mother commented right away, "It looks like you had an entertaining afternoon. You won't believe this. Who I ran into while I was out. Peggy Scranton. We were just talking about her, remember?" Peggy Scranton, her mother repeated slowly. That's wonderful. The two of you were such good friends back in the day. Peggy invited me to join her this evening with a couple of her other friends for a girls' night out. Peggy's single, and so is Jane, but Chloe's married. Working the long hours she had on the project for Ferguson Group, she hadn't been out with her friends in ages. Although Lindy hadn't spoken to Peggy in years, it was as if they never spent time apart. They both fell back into an easy friendship that they had always shared. I remember when you and Peggy were inseparable, her mother said, interrupting Lindy's musings. She was one of my best friends ever. That evening, as Lindy readied for her meeting with Peggy and her friends at the wine press, she paused long enough to open her nightstand. She removed the tablet with the letters she had written Santa the night before. One of the things she had asked Santa for was to bring her a new best friend. Gotta say, Santa, you're good. You're really good. And that takes us to chapter 5. Oh my goodness. This is such an awesome book. I tell you, it makes you just want to keep reading and reading and reading. And I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. And so glad to see all of you chatting during the read. That is awesome. And I want to thank you all for being a part of our book read tonight. And this is Dear Santa by Debbie McComber. And a couple ideas ran through my head while I was reading that. Can't wait to share it with you this week in the book club. Good night, everyone. Sweet dreams and happy positivity.